On Steady Climate by Owen Anders and Anton Ricker. Climate change has become more and more a part of our society since the past few years. Climate change is a change in global or regional climate patterns, basically meaning that it is a constant changing pattern of weather over a region or area. There are a couple of reasons that climate change is occurring. One of them is because of the amount of carbon dioxide being released into the air. According to www.eartheclipse.com, the carbon dioxide in the air is creating a greenhouse effect. This is an effect where the Earth absorbs and radiates the sun's heat around the globe for the benefit of life. But if this effect is put to an extreme, then the Earth will start to overheat to the point that it gets too hot for life on Earth. One of the other reasons is because of deforestation. Deforestation is the cutting down of trees and forests in many numbers. One of the things that can help balance out the carbon dioxide in the air is actually the trees. The trees breathe in the carbon dioxide and breathe out the oxygen. But lately, because of the deforestation, there has been less and less trees to balance that out. According to ec.europa.eu, the trees help regulate the climate by absorbing the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, so when they are cut down, that beneficial effect is lost, and the carbon stored in the trees is released into the atmosphere, adding to the greenhouse effect. There are quite a few effects that climate change has on the Earth, but I'll only mention a couple of them. One of those effects is the bleaching of the coral reefs. Coral reefs are known to be a safe home and habitat for small sea creatures, and be very colorful, but lately because of the rising temperatures in the water, the coral is dying and getting bleached. This event occurs because according to www.independent.co, basically the algae actually has a main source of food that it depends on, but because of the hotter temperatures in the water, that source is dying off, resulting in the coral dying off. Another effect it has is because of the mass melting of glaciers and ice in Antarctica. The rising temperatures around the globe and result of climate change have been resulting in the mass melting of glaciers. The glaciers are actually a habitat for some animals, but if all the ice is melting, then it will create less and less space for life to grow. As you can see in this graph here, the carbon dioxide levels have been consistent throughout many of the past years, but lately there has been a spike in the levels of it. This has been resulting in a major change in temperature and hotter climates all around the world. The average temperature around the globe was starting to spike up around 1990 and have been gradually rising up until now, the 21st century. Now we will be having an interview with an expert at this topic, and we will be asking two questions to Ashley Sullivan. It's kind of long, so get ready.
Hi, my name's Ashley, and I'm the Executive Director of OwensProject for a Clean Ocean. My job is to clean and protect the ocean and conserve a healthy and thriving marine ecosystem. Now, what does all that have to do with climate change? Well, if you've ever been in, on, or around the ocean, you probably have seen plastic trash. Now, that plastic trash is actually having an effect on climate change, and it's having an effect on human health. We've got a problem with plastic. When we make plastics, plastics are made using fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, we know, when they're burned, create carbon dioxide. And this gas is one of the major greenhouse gases that is affecting our climate change. Now, what are greenhouse gases doing to our environment? They are making it warmer. They're making the air warmer, and they're also making the oceans warmer. So what happens when the ocean gets a little warmer? Well, I'll give you an example of a lobster. So if a lobster is living in a particular area in the ocean, let's say the northern Atlantic, when the water begins to warm, the lobster can't live in that temperature, so it needs to move further north to survive. Well, what about the people that live in that area that depend on that lobster, the fishermen, or the families that eat the lobsters, or the businesses that have restaurants that sell lobsters? So that's one way that the warming ocean can affect humans. Another reason is that when the ocean is warmer, it's like the ocean has a fever and it can't do the important jobs that it needs to do, that it's supposed to do. One of those jobs is that the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide that is produced on Earth, that we produce when we make plastics. So another important job is that the ocean also makes oxygen. I don't know if you guys know this, but 70% of the air that we breathe comes from oxygen that is produced by the ocean. So if the ocean is getting sick and it's struggling, it's having a really hard time to make the oxygen that we need to breathe and absorb all of this carbon dioxide that we're producing. The other problem with plastic is that we're making way too much of it. We don't have the ability to recycle it all. And the plastic that can't get recycled is going to landfill or it's ending up in our environment. Now, we know that when plastic is exposed to the environment, like the sun and the water, that it begins to break up. And plastic can break up instead of breaking down, like a banana would turn back into dirt. Plastics are breaking up into tiny, tiny little pieces called microplastics. Now, the problem with that is that those microplastics are now in the ocean, and they have the ability to absorb pollutants that are in the ocean, like gas and oil. Now, the plastics, little tiny pieces of plastic, have oil and gas on them, and then we have fish that are mistaking those little pieces of plastic for food. And who eats fish? We do. So what's happening is that the plastics and the chemicals that are adhering to the plastics are ending up in our food chain, and we are consuming those chemicals. And we know that those chemicals are not good for human health. Now, the second question is, what are some ways that we can put a halt to climate change? Well, to carry on with this conversation, we know that we can break up with plastic. In the US, one person will use, on average, 500 plastic bags per year. And on average, that bag will get used for maybe 15 minutes, and then it'll get discarded. And we can do better than that. But what's important to understand is that not all plastics are bad. Plastics have been a really wonderful material for technology and for medicines, but there are certain plastics that we can really do without. And those are what we call single-use plastics. Plastics that we're going to use one time and discard and never use it again. Things like straws, single-use plastic water bottles, single-use plastic bags, single-use forks and spoons. So what's a way that you guys can impact this problem is that there are so many little single-use things that you're probably using every day that you can probably do without. Can you think of one thing? And that's a great place to start. Just pick that one thing that you're willing to change, that one behavior you're willing to change, because that one thing will add up to huge impact for our oceans, for climate change, and ultimately our health. There are over 7 billion people on the planet. And if we all woke up tomorrow and said, you know what, we're not going to use plastic bags anymore, can you imagine the impact that we would have on the climate? It would be huge. So come on, guys, we can all do this, but we can do it together. Just pick one thing you're willing to change and start there.